What's up, everybody? Happy Tuesday.
I want to talk.
We're both calling in sick today. Thanks so much for coming. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time on Beyond 2D.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.
Listen, I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, and this is my fabulous co-host.
Farron, Dozier, retired Army Sergeant First Class. The
There
other
it is.
D in Beyond 2D.
The other day. I love it. Love it. We are continuing our conversation this week on forgiveness and compassion. We have 4 weeks of this fabulous topic. Last week, as we got started with forgiveness, it was a little spicy.
Wasn't it though?
It was a little spicy. It was a little, but you know what? When we I got off the show and I had some messages. I had some DMs real quick from people that were like, "Girl, I was right with you." I was But they were
Whatever.
like, "Did you guys talk after? Like, is everything okay?" And I was like, "Listen, I felt like we had a really good conversation in the end on the show, and we brought it back around
Mm-hmm.
to practicing forgiveness and compassion and all of that as we had the conversation. And then we did talk for a few minutes after the show. And I think we knew getting into a lot of these deep topics that we weren't going to agree on everything.
Yeah, we can't. That's not realistic.
Yeah. Yeah.
We,
So it was a great conversation.
we're still here.
We're still here. We showed up the next time.
It's not 1D. It's not 1D.
Yep, that's it. It's not 1D. And so we're diving into, we talked about foundations of forgiveness last week. And this week we are talking about living compassion. Living
Mm.
compassion. And so there's a lot of different layers to this conversation today. And one of the things I want to ask of our audience today is to come into this conversation with a bit of an open mind, open heart, because we are going to see compassion and what it means to live compassion in very different ways this evening. I can guarantee you that. Guarantee it's happening. Um so we're going to explore the connection. How does compassion relate to forgiveness? Discover the interconnections between having compassion for others and the ability to forgive. We're going to talk about how far does your compassion extend?
Mm.
Does your compassion have boundaries? Which
Oh
is,
God.
we love that word. We love that word over here. And how do we practice expanding the reach of our compassion? How do we live with more compassion? And how do we incorporate compassionate living in everyday interactions, enhancing both personal growth and community well-being? How do we enhance it? How do we be compassion as how do
Mhm.
we be being, as
There it
Farron
is.
likes to
There it
say?
is right there. That's it right there. Game over.
There it is. There it is. Love it. Listen, Miss Brittany's out there. Happy Tuesday. And she's
What's
like, oh, this is going to be good.
where my fellas at?
Didn't you call in reinforcements this week?
I'm no longer in the military. I can't do that like that.
Oh, that's sad. That's sad. All right. Let's get into it. Let's start as we usually do and talk about the definition of compassion, according to dictionary.com.
Okay.
A homeschooling mother's friend. Okay. Dictionary.com. Compassion is a noun. Now, okay, this is
Disclaimer.
this is fantastic. I love this definition because I completely hate it. I don't like it at all. And I will get into explaining why in a little bit, because I actually wrote one of my chapters in radical self-love about why I don't like this definition. So I'm going to get to that at the
All
end
right.
of the show. You got to stay tuned.
Oh, we
Okay.
gotta wait.
Compassion, noun, a feeling of deep sympathy and sorrow for another who is stricken by misfortune, accompanied by a strong desire to alleviate the suffering. A feeling of deep sympathy and sorrow for another who is stricken by misfortune, accompanied by a strong desire to alleviate that suffering. Some synonyms are benevolence, empathy, grace, humanity, kindness, mercy, sorrow, sympathy, and tenderness.
And you don't like that definition?
I don't.
Whoa. I guess it's gonna be
Don't.
one of Tuesdays again, huh?
I think this definition is limiting when it comes to the word compassion. I'll expand more on that, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about
Immediately, what I get from this definition is a place of love and concern
mm,
for another person.
yeah.
Like that's to me, that's what that speaks to. And so sometimes in relationships with people, it doesn't come across as compassion.
Mm,
It comes across as alleviate the suffering. Like, what are you doing? You need to go do. You need to do blah 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 blah. Right? Because of the love of we don't like to see one another suffer
mm,
and go through struggles and pains and worries and like we don't want to see that in people.
right.
But people have to go through that for their own life journey, their own whatever that is. But yeah, I mean, that's the first thing that I heard to myself when you read that is a space of love.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I see that too with this specific definition. I still
yeah.
think it's very limiting, and again, I'll explain why when we
You
get into
can't
it.
limit
I
love.
you it's very limiting for a reason, and I will
Okay,
break it down.
I
I will
can't
break it
wait.
down. But yeah, I feel the same way about this specific definition. I do feel like like compassion comes from a very um needs to come from a very loving place. That's how I relate to it. It is very similar to love for me. Um and I would love to hear anybody that's watching, what is your personal definition of compassion? Do you feel connected with this definition? Why or why not? Whether you're live or on the replay, we would love for you to chime in the comments. Again, it's not about 1D. We need your
Wow.
perspective too.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about, do you feel like you are, as you talk about often being different things, do you
Mhm.
feel like you are being compassion all the time, or do you ever need to reach for it?
No, I believe that I'm being compassionate a 75, 80% of the time,
Mm,
but that 25% that doesn't seem like I'm being compassionate is because you want to help that person not suffer.
mm,
So then I have to check my language and my concerns for that person versus that person to find out what that person's concerns for themselves, right?
mm,
Because I might be trying to alleviate the suffering, and you don't look at it that way, right? And
right,
so how I'm trying to help you with through that, you don't need that kind of help. You have to let that person tell you what that is,
right,
the help that they need, because it may not be. And I believe that's why that empathy is such a now that definition, why empathy is such a hard or a difficult place to experience. Because if I'm the one that's giving the compassion and I'm coming across like I don't care because I'm trying to solve the problem, and you might need to go through that experience
yeah,
and you're not ready to have the solution yet. You want to be in the low, you want to be in the thick of the upset, and you might need that drama. And so there's the disconnection of the human connection, and there I could see why people may not feel the compassion or the experience of compassion in between us, because especially if I'm trying to be right about how to alleviate it, like this is how you get out of that, and you don't want me to be right, even though I'm right. You don't want that, because now if I'm right in that space of me being right about the situation, there's no love present. There's no
right,
experience of love. So yeah, I like that.
yeah,
That's the
yeah.
fine line.
It's interesting to me because remember when we were talking about the foundations of forgiveness last week, and we were talking about the definition, and it talked about one of the synonyms, one of the like words for forgiveness was compassion. But it's interesting that forgiveness didn't come up as a main synonym for compassion, which is really interesting because last week I was sharing about how I feel like they're related, but like cousins, not brother and sister. Like they're like maybe second cousins, on a good day. And the reason why is because I feel like there's a certain level for me of compassion that needs to exist in order to be in that textbook definition of forgiveness, which we talked about last night, is wiping clean, absolution, amnesty, all of that. And so for me, like, I need to feel something in order to forgive, something, that love, that compassion, in order to forgive. So it's for me, like, it's hard to have it be the same thing when I feel like without compassion, it would be hard for me to forgive.
So the one issue that I see with this word as compassion, this is something that I had to learn for myself, because the definition has multiple meanings to it, right?
Mhm.
Compassion is the label,
Mm.
right? Because what's compassion for me and you and 10 other people, it may not be the same. So I'm reporting on a feeling and emotion or a
Mhm.
situation that I'm experiencing, and I'm labeling it as compassion so that everybody can understand where I'm coming from. But then I might not think that's
Right.
needs it doesn't. I might think that that doesn't need the attention of compassion.
Right.
It might need the attention of, let's alleviate that, get that taken care of, so you can go and be free and live your life. And so with the human experience, we all experience life differently, and we all give meaning to that experience of life differently, more so.
Mm.
So yeah, the compassion to me is like all the other topics we've had. It's the label, accountability, response. Like those are the labels. But then, what does that mean to what it means to me might not mean the same to you.
What does it look like for you?
Yeah, so it's best to put our what I teach today at church is put our opinions aside about what compassion is for me, and
Mhm.
listen to you so I can see where you are in your life experiences, and then help you in those areas that you need compassion in, not
Right.
what I think you need the compassion. So giving up my opinion is huge, when trying to when attempting to express empathy, and so the person doesn't feel like you're belittling them, or the pity that could come with
Right.
the experience of pity that can come with compassion too.
Yeah.
It's tough, but that's I think it's the label.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. And Kelly's joining us this evening. Good evening, Miss
Yay!
Kelly. Good to
Where's
see
Steve,
you.
James, and Bill? Oh my
Farron's missing
god!
his crew this evening. Where y'all at? Where
So
y'all
I'm gonna work on that. I'm gonna work on that.
at?
Watch.
My girls are representing out there. That's all
Whatever.
I'm gonna say. Okay. So listen, but I have compassion for you, and in
Why?
this
Thank you.
moment,
Thank you for sharing your friends with me.
that's what I'm here. I'm here to I'm here to be of
That's not
service.
what I need right now. I don't need your compassion right now. I need my own friends.
Well, I love what you're talking about though, of really checking in. If you're saying that you have if you're saying that you have compassion for someone or something, then we need to check in with, how is that presenting itself to the people or the situation that we're talking about. Because it's really important, I think, for me to know how I am being received, and not from a people pleaser kind of way, but from a, I really do care. I really do care about you and how I'm coming across, and how my words and my actions are affecting you. If you're telling me um you're not coming across in a way that is very nice right now,
Mhm.
that's going to mean something to me, and not to change to try to please you, but because that will then make me feel like I'm going to feel bad about that.
Right.
I can't sleep at night knowing that I've hurt you as someone that I care about. So I want to
Right.
know how I'm coming across. And Kelly was like, dude, you are loved too, Farron. You are loved
All right, Kelly. Thank you.
um and so it's important for me to know how I'm coming across, and I think that's a really important leadership quality in general, as we're whether we're hosting a show or
With your
I will
children.
know sometimes on a show when we've gotten into a heavy topic, and I am like this close to the camera because I'm really passionate about what we're talking about, and I get that New England girl starts coming out and I can feel it and it happens, and I will say in the end I'm like, let me pause and share my intention for the message that I've been trying to share tonight, because I realize that the way I come across sometimes is not for everybody. And I think that's the case for everybody across the
Well, of
board.
course, yeah.
We're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but I think it's important for us to take time to understand each other's intentions.
And if you understand that you're not everybody's cup of tea, you can then be responsible for your behavior
Mm.
when it's not welcomed in the way you think it should be welcomed. So you can remove yourself out of the equation and be like, okay, I can just be with you with whatever you need to talk about, and I'm not going to add my 50 cents or 21 questions or anything. I'm just going to be with you and listen to. So I'm listening, like not reacting to what you're saying, but really listening. Oh, why'd you say it like that?
Mm.
What had you think that? And that's a different conversation than me trying to tell you how to alleviate this suffering.
Right. Right. So I want to there's a couple things that we'll get to after the break. I don't necessarily want to open that open that door just
Or I
yet,
want to
as
dance
we
around it.
we're gonna dance a little bit. But so you mentioned listening and asking more questions. How do you bring yourself to have more compassion for others, if at all? Does it happen naturally for you, or are there things you do to bring yourself to that place?
So I've been at this for 14 years, and so when I discovered how corrupted my mind was and my behavior and my thoughts and all my actions and consequences, and then to reconcile that with myself and have a level of self forgiveness and self compassion, then you naturally want to give that away, because now I know if what I'm dealing with in life and my experiences in life have been crazy and what I've done to people, not purposely, but because of my behavior, then I'm not going to let that get in the way of allowing you to be with you to figure out what are you dealing with, because I know what I was dealing with. And so that's what we don't really understand, that by having the level of self-love and self compassion for ourselves, that's the fruit that you then can give away.
Mm.
So I couldn't do it before 14 years ago. No. And if it was a miracle. But when I learned about myself and I did the work around myself to heal what I was dealing with, I can only imagine what the next human being is dealing with.
Yeah.
And mine was all emotional stuff. But some people have some real life experiences that are different from mine. And so I can't make that person wrong for their behavior. I'm more now like, hey, well, let me check in. What's going on with you? And create the space for that opportunity for that person to say, hey, you know what? This is what I'm dealing with. So the compassion is going to be my listening and how I'm listening to them, and how I'm talking, responding to them
Mm.
in a way to alleviate, or like, well, so tell me some more about that. How did you get in this situation? Like,
Mm.
what's going on? That's a different conversation than,
Right.
because you already probably feel on the other side of that compassion is shame, embarrassment, upset, disappointment, like diminished experience of yourself, and I'm gonna come trying to be right about that. Like, so
Mm.
we have to put ourselves on the other side of that. That what we want talking about compassion. What is that other person's experience of this conversation?
Right.
And they're gonna tell you. They might describe it like, oh, I'm struggling, I got issues. Like I said, we use words to describe life, but we don't really say exactly what I'm dealing with until we're in the space of I'm comfortable with you and say, hey, actually, I got financial issues, or I got
Right.
issues with my children or my mom. But if I say I'm struggling, how can I be compassionate to the struggle? I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just fix it.
It has me really thinking right now about this question. Can we create a better space for people to be more compassionate towards us? And the reason because we can't control other people, right? I have no control of whether or not you decide to have compassion for me.
No.
However, can we create a more fruitful space where that can happen by how we communicate? If we are just shut down and choose not to share any part of ourselves, what does the other person then have to be compassionate about?
Exactly. Exactly.
And it's, again, that's not about you taking blame for somebody else having compassion, but can we, this is something that I've been asking myself a lot when it comes to these conversations about compassion, forgiveness, even love and peace and everything else. Am I creating
Hmm.
a fruitful space for that to happen, or am I being stubborn and,
Exactly.
being bullheaded with the situation as well?
And it may, you may describe it as stubborn and bullheaded,
Mhm.
but really the emotion experience behind that. I'm embarrassed to talk about this out loud. I have shame. I don't want to be judged. So that's the experience of what we have inside of us that we don't say out loud. But I want you to have compassion for me because I'm struggling.
Mm.
But I'm not gonna. I don't have the courage or the confidence to tell you this is where my struggle is exactly, and
Yeah.
don't judge me. And I
Yeah.
feel shame about it because I put myself in this situation, and now I'm embarrassed.
Right.
So now,
Right.
how can I get empathy when I'm experiencing? How can I give my that compassion space when I'm feeling embarrassed? I'm gonna
Right.
go in and out of compassion and embarrassment. Exactly.
There
And
you
that
go.
word right there, I I stopped using vulnerable at 14. So take that off the screen because I don't even use that word because I was hurt from being vulnerable.
Farron doesn't like that word.
That's
Moving
my,
on.
so, but I'm saying, so you see how
Yeah.
those words are triggering for some, and
Right.
it's like you have no idea what that person is dealing with unless you can give up your opinion about the situation, give up your one of you to be right or wrong or good or bad, and let that person just be with that person.
Yeah.
Caldwell's definition is communication is harmonious.
Mm,
Communication is harmonious,
I love that. Yes.
but
Mhm.
one of us got to be harmonious.
Yeah.
And if you're not,
Absolutely.
then I have to bring myself to that space
Right.
to create the
Right.
environment for a harmonious conversation. And I have to give up my pride, my ego, wanting to be right, wanting to be whatever, and to be
Mm,
like, hey, where you at? Where you at?
right.
And
Right.
you never know what that person's gonna open up and tell you. And you better be ready for that person to tell you where they at.
Well, we've talked about that in this conversation about consequences of, and when I say consequences, good, bad, or indifferent, it doesn't have to necessarily be a negative,
Right.
have a negative connotation to it. I had to pause really quick
Go
because we
ahead.
have a celebrity in our midst this
Where,
evening.
where, 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 who?
Have a celebrity in our midst. One of our Breakthrough Show Network OGs, literally from the gate of the Breakthrough Show, and I have
Okay, OG.
had the pleasure of hugging this beautiful soul in person. Jamad is in the building.
What's
Jojo Emmanuel,
up?
what's up?
What it do, baby boo?
I love your comment too. Giving has to be a receive has to have a receiver.
Yeah.
Love that. I love that. Listen, I gotta roll out the red carpet for my Jamad. Okay. Listen, I love you. Like hug you again. Here it comes. Here it comes. There it is. It's very rare that I get to see people in person. I have a special connection with those
No
people.
doubt, no doubt.
Um, yeah, I like he's like I'm open to receive here. um but yeah, this is the topic of compassion and forgiveness is so layered, and I think so much of it ties into conversations that we've already had on the show, communication being a huge huge part of
Another
this.
label. That's another label. We have to
Yeah.
peel off that communication label and have the conversations of what does it mean to me? What does it mean to
Mhm.
you? And then how do we have that space to have that,
Yeah.
whatever kind of communication we're trying to create? Oh, there are the hearts. What's up, brother?
Rhonda's in the building. Yeah, it's a lot. This it's a lot of
And
breathing
so
through it here.
and so that's why I learned in this in my journey of my own self forgiveness and self love is you just can't do compassion. Like I'm gonna save that for the second half, but you can't. These are things that you just. There are some words that are action words, but they're also experience words as well. There's a combination. So we think that, I'm gonna do compassion and it's gonna just live there and stay there. No, you can't just do compassion as an action. It has a human experience connected to that. Yeah. And like you said, if I don't have the fruit to give that, then how am I going to receive it or give it?
Right. So listen, I want everybody to answer a question in the comments on the break. What in how far does your compassion go? Are there boundaries to your compassion? I want you all to share about this as we go to break in the comments. And I need y'all to be brave. Be with me right now, okay, everybody?
Be with her.
After the break, we're gonna dive into a couple of. I don't even have pearls, and I'm grabbing them here. Okay, we're gonna go to break. We're gonna be right back after this.
Where's my phone?
For more of Beyond 2D. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this.
Help me. Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm blessed, my bro. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Hey, did you see the game last night?
Oh, that was a good game.
But did you see the shot?
I lost money from that shot.
Oh, man, that shot was cold, man.
I hated it, but it was good. Damn. What's in those jeans?
You really want to know?
I do.
Exhaustion, muscle spasms, asthmatic issues, unexpected sickle cell trait crises.
Damn, are you serious? When I was young, I found out I had sickle cell trait. My mom's told me, but I ain't have no knowledge of it. But when I got older, I had a child, and the doctor told me my daughter has sickle cell trait. Do you know the facts that both parents have sickle cell trait? There's a 50% chance the child may have the trait, and 25% chance the child may have the disease.
Hey, that's what's the count. Do you know that 2.5 million people in the United States have sickle cell trait, 300 million people globally? I didn't find out I had sickle cell trait until I was in the Army, 10 years. Next thing you know, I had a sickle cell trait exertion site.
Sickle cell? I thought that was a black gene or something.
Nah, man, the Latin community is number 2. 1 out of 36,000 babies are being born with sickle cell disease. You could be Caucasian, Mediterranean, European. You gotta know your bloodline, man. There is an inherited gene in our community that has been forgotten. The name is sickle cell trait. WDCONSCT, also known as What's the Count, is out to bring awareness, education, and prevention to people all over the globe. Want more information? Call us now at 323-215-5384 or visit www.wdconsct.org.
Welcome back to Beyond 2D. I'm one of your hosts, Jessica Dugas. This is the fabulous co-host, Farron, Dozier.
Oh my gosh.
We've had everybody chiming in the thank y'all for being brave today. Thank y'all for being brave with us. This topic we've been covering over the last this is week 2 of 4 weeks on forgiveness and compassion. And we're diving into lots of different things. I encourage you guys to keep tuning in. On our next episode is going to be May 14th and then May 28th. And next week, next episode, we're going to be talking about parent-child relationships. I'm going to be absent for that. And then
you better be.
And then the final episode will talk about the ripple effect of forgiveness and how forgiveness transforms the world, and how we can move forward and making the world a better place, which I think most of us here have a passion for, and that's something that we would love to see. Yeah. All right, let's go over some of these comments. Before the break, I asked for anyone, is there a limit to how far you will extend your compassion, and are there boundaries to your compassion? Rhonda brought up, speaking of parent-child, wow. I have more compassion for those who have hurt me than those who have hurt my children. Oof. So that's You want to address that next week, Ron?
Nope.
Can we circle
Nope.
back? Circle back.
Yeah, we
Okay.
definitely gonna circle back
Great.
on that one.
Wonderful. Okay. Yeah, yes. And I feel that as a parent as well. Sometimes, and I can even be harder on myself than other people can be on me as well. That compassion, I get that there being like a difference, I
Yeah.
suppose, in who will um experience that. I don't have boundaries to my compassion. That feels like it would limit my energy, but I do have boundaries for how much access people have to me. And that we talked about that during when we when we got into that little tip about boundaries initially. Um
That
as
episode.
well. But I get that too of like, I think as we're talking about this topic of forgiveness and compassion, I think we mentioned it last week about how just because we've forgiven someone, that doesn't mean that they have to be sitting at our
Yeah.
table,
Right.
for
And
dinner.
that's something that I just learned recently through church, because I've had grappled with the boundaries, you know, being in language versus in nature. But when the prophet said that, yes, you don't have to be around people's behavior, because it's not the person, it's the behavior. So separating the person doesn't allow me to judge that person, but I definitely have a choice to be around the person's behavior, and to communicate that to the person as well. Don't just walk away from them. No, like, hey, I love you. I don't mind hanging around you, but this part of your behavior right here, it doesn't work for me. So why I'm not going to be hanging around, and I didn't realize that I had that power to protect that for myself. That energy we call energy. I didn't realize that, but it helped me understand not to label the person only.
Right.
Like, I don't want to be around you. It's the behavior, and I have a choice in that matter.
Yeah. And sometimes that, and I think we'll get into that this a little bit next episode. Sometimes there are things like blood relation that can make that choice to not sit at the same table a really difficult one to make. A really, really difficult one to make. Kelly wants to know first, why is vulnerable a word you don't like? I think we've addressed this maybe a time or two.
Yeah.
She says, compassion is part of my makeup. Has it hurt me? Absolutely. Is it worth it? 1,000%. And so I think it sounds like, Kelly, that part of your definition of compassion may also, like, I think sometimes when we have compassion for someone, if they don't show it back, that's where that hurting can come from. 100%. Have you experienced that?
The vulnerability, real to sum it up, I can sum it up real quick now. Back then, it was just a whole story, and it was emotional. The one of the reasons why I stopped using being vulnerable was because when I went back to this girlfriend of mine who I asked to stay with me to continue to be my girlfriend, she said, "No, you're not the guy for me." I made it mean that I'm not going to be vulnerable because I felt so hurt in her response, and understanding that, hey, everybody's not going to like you. Everybody's not going to be your friend. Everybody's not going to date you. I didn't understand that at 14. So the emotional wound that came with that being vulnerable when I was begging her to stay and give me another chance, it hurt. And so I refused to experience that diminished experience of myself. It was that diminished internal, like, dang, you messed up again. Like that hurts. And you have to be vulnerable to experience life. And I did not. And I was 14. So that was a long time ago.
Yeah. A minute.
Just a minute.
Brittany says, I struggle with showing compassion to those who wronged me, if I'm being completely honest. Compassion doesn't always come easy then. And I get that. Like, when there's a struggle there, it can be more when we've been hurt, like we've just been talking about, it can be a harder time finding that. She said, I usually find my way there, but the path isn't always so easy. I think for me, as we're going back to what we were talking before, and I think maybe this, you can chime in on this, Brittany, for sure, is when I talked about the difference between compassion and forgiveness, and I feel like that compassion has to exist. Sometimes it's easier for me to get to the compassion first but that absolution, that wiping clean, that forgiveness part is more of a challenge for me than compassion, 100%. And so in situations like that where we've been hurt really bad, I can feel for you, I can see your point of view, but now that next step of like, where am I
You,
gonna go for that is the question.
you know where you go. I'm gonna tell you. Can I tell you where to go for that? To look, just one space to look at. For where I had to look was, I had to look at my part of that disagreement, right?
Mhm.
Of that upset. And so when I told the truth, even when I hit with my parents, my mom and my dad, I had to take 100% responsibility because I made it up. Even if I had proof that they abandoned me or whatever that was, being able to look in my life and say, you know what, maybe there's something that I could have said or didn't say that could have altered that conversation. It could have altered that experience in that relationship. Then that takes that, it alters that story of blame to that person to then what is my part of that responsibility in that.
Mhm.
And then if I take my part in that responsibility, that was what allowed me to disappear the upset of the story of what happened.
Mhm.
And I was able to truly, that to me, that's where true forgiveness is at. If you're really, we call it the umbrella of forgiveness, where I'm going to take the umbrella of forgiveness, and even if I don't think I said something wrong, maybe I didn't say something that I didn't have the courage to say that could have changed that outcome of that situation. And now, am I blaming? Am I putting that back on you? No. Then I'm a part of that disagreement. So
Right.
then it changes the story.
Right.
And in that space is like, okay, if I thought about that, then I can only imagine what that was for you. And
Right.
then I could go back and say, hey, you know what? In this conversation, did I not say something? Maybe I said something, or how did I say it, or did I what? Because withholding communication is communication. So
Right.
if I think it and I don't say it, I'm withholding that dialogue that could have really made the difference in that relationship
Right.
that may have not had us do a falling out. So then I'm 100% responsible for even the upsets in my life, for even
Right.
the stuff that doesn't work out. I'm still responsible. And if I tell the truth to myself, I can see where I was withholding some emotions or not being vulnerable
Mhm.
or whatever that was. And then so the story goes away about what happened, and I take responsibility for the broken communication.
Yeah. And
It's
we talked about before on another topic, I can't even remember. I think we've talked about it a couple times about keeping score.
yeah,
And so that is a thought for me that I've thought about a lot when that's the part that makes it easier for me to forgive is asking myself, am I keeping some kind of scorecard here? Like
yeah,
who needs to be right first or
yeah.
whatever. I want to give a quick shout out to Star Sourcer who just found our channel.
What's up,
We love, thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad that you found us, and I would love for you to chime in on our conversation about compassion this evening. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. Everybody kind of chiming in, agreeing with what we're talking about. Jamad said, dust off your feet and walk away from the situation. I don't think we have to live in anger at one another. And
Star?
that's that, like, for, you know, we,
Like I said, it's not the person. It's people are not our problems, but people have problems. And if I understand that we all have problems in there, then I can be compassionate with you and your problems because I have my
Mhm.
own,
Right,
and
right.
it's just a different thought process.
Yeah. Rhonda said, name the behavior.
Name it,
Talking about what you were talking
yeah,
saying.
name it.
The forgiveness part is harder for me to reach than the compassion. That's what Brittany was talking
Yeah,
about as well. So as we're having this conversation of compassion, one of the things that I wanted to talk about this evening is extending it beyond the conversation that we're having here. And compassion is a word that comes up very, very, very often for me in my lifestyle as a vegan, as somebody who is plant based, as that's the way that I live. Because when I asked the question, and I was curious about this as we went to break, and I talked about the boundaries of compassion. I think it is fairly normal for us as humans when we're talking about it to relate it to other humans and to be that's where our brain goes, that's where my brain went for the majority of my life. And the reason this is important for me to bring up today is because what I want this evening is for us to kind of expand our thoughts on the boundaries of compassion, about compassion for not just people, but circumstances, compassion for our planet, compassion for animals, compassion for other beings that aren't necessarily human beings. And those are things that I think, even if you go, yeah, I don't like that word, that V word or whatever, and that's not for me, or whatever you want to think. I think that it's something that's important for us to think about and process, as we talk about this word compassion. And so I asked a friend of mine, because my brain wasn't braining very well earlier today. I asked a very good friend of mine, about, what is your thought about compassion and veganism, etc. And this is what she said. And I wanted to read this, and shout out to Casey, and thank you so much for your thoughts on this. She said, compassion can seem deep, layered, and maybe even hard. But when it comes to veganism, a simple and quick consideration when putting food on your plate can be a lifelong commitment to compassion for animals. Once you have that type of compassion, all others seem to flow or come naturally or appear more clear, whether it's for people, disasters, etc. She said, I've learned a lot about compassion since becoming vegan, and it's also taught me to listen, give people grace, and have more patience and understanding. And I wanted to talk about this. I have been very conscious with the people that I interact with in the vegan community. I know a lot of people that are not vegan that have had not so compassionate interactions with other vegans, and saying um, where they might have shared, like, veganism is not for me, or I'm not going to be willing to, even have a meatless Monday, or whatever the case may be. And they've been put down for it by other vegans. And so one of the questions that I told Casey that I was going to talk about this evening, is that in an effort to be compassionate to one person or one species or whatever, we often feel like there has to be less compassion towards someone or something else, even if that's a subconscious thing. So even talking about human to human, if I have more compassion, like if we had an argument and I have compassion for you, does that mean then that there's less compassion for me somehow? And I don't think that it has to be like that. There's not this hierarchy that has to exist. And so this hierarchy that we create, both as non-vegans, of going like one species deserves more compassion than another, or as vegans going, humans don't deserve compassion if they're not compassion to animals. I think either way, we're in the wrong in this compassion conversation. And so how can we have more compassion across the board and not make it so that one thing or person is more deserving than another, in this conversation of compassion? So it's interesting, for me, but it's become really important in how I live my life to look at, um it's not just about me. It's not just about me. I think compassion is one of the most selfless places to arrive at, um, and as we think about and process the needs of other beings, and for me, other beings than just human beings. So that's one of the things that I really wanted to share about this evening, because I think it's more than just a conversation about human to human.
You know, being able to now speak at, my cousin's church on Youth Sunday, and then my church on the third Sunday. The biggest thing that I've got coming back into church and learning about myself with the development courses with the cognitive behavior classes, with the grievance classes, with Caldwell's listening education, like putting all that together. At the end of the day, you know what it was really about? Me giving my opinion. And I have to give up my opinion about myself, but also then give up my opinion about the world, because the world has opinions about all kind of stuff. Like you said, what a vegan is, what the vegan shouldn't do, and people who ain't vegans got opinions about that. Like, we have opinions about so much in life, but we also have a lot of opinions about ourselves. And the conflict is me giving up my opinion about myself, and then up against what the world has to say about that. But then what am I gauging my opinions up against that's outside of how I feel about life or how I care about it? And I believe you have to find some kind of principle or belief system that's outside of you that you're going to use to challenge your life up against. And if you're going to challenge your life up against the principle of being compassion, then you might have to give your opinion. You might have to give the opinions of what the world has to say, because the people in your life may not have the same. Just because there's 5 million people that agree with me about what it is to be, a broadcaster, that's out of 8 billion people, 5 million is a very small amount of people. Mm-hmm. So if I can give up my opinion about myself and my views of it, and give up my opinion of what the world has to say, then what am I listening from? Mm. I'm listening from nothing. Yeah. Or I'm going to listen from my biblical principles, which I trust. I'm going to listen to what Lamar Education taught me. It's because I trust. And then I gauge up off of the cognitive behavior. Yeah. Because I trust. So either one of those three, that if I gauge my life up, compassion up against those three, guess what? They're all going to lead me back to love, appreciation, give up my opinion, and then listen to what people have to say, because my opinion doesn't mean it. It's my opinion. Right. And but we want our opinions to be the truth about life, and it's not the truth. It's your truth, but it's not the truth. And I really believe that if we practice giving up our opinions about life, we can have a whole nother conversation about what's going on with people. Yeah. And we don't label. Because now I label you as a vegan, right? So I'm going to talk to you like the world talks about vegans. And then I'm going to add my opinion about what a vegan is. So now it has nothing to do with you. Yep. And why you even chose that lifestyle or chose to eat what you eat. Yep. It has nothing to do with me.
And that's one of the things that I really is interesting. So I knew this was going to happen, and I was prepared for this, and I'm watching and listening, because and that's why, like, I feel very strongly at the moment about how about the place that I'm in where compassion is concerned, because when I said the word vegan, I watched our numbers drop every second for the show. And I knew it was going to happen because cognitive dissonance. If we don't know, we can, we have our opinion and we can shut it down. And for me, this goes back to, are you committed to having a conversation? Are you committed to listening and hearing and talking, or are you not? No. And it's very clear. I want raise your hand if you're still here with us right now. I want you to raise your hand, because I'm going to give you some. I'm going to give you some love for sticking it out here. I want to give you some love, because for me, like when I to give a little bit of history, we became plant-based because my daughter was dying. Like she was in a bad health situation, and that's what started it for us. So when people come at me with their bacon jokes and everything else that they got, and videos that they want to send me and whatnot, there's feelings behind all of this. Now, in the beginning, I would be mad. Like I would be mad, and I would be like, delete, done. Like no conversation necessary, not happening. But going back to what we were talking about before, I think it's really, really, really important for us to have conversation about it. And I don't take offense to it anymore because of what you're talking about. Because of you going now, I think like if you and I have had a conversation about why this is important to me and how it saved my daughter's life, and then I became a Reiki master right after that, and it opened my mind about the compassion side of how we treat other species, and it's not okay. It's not okay with me. And so if we've had a conversation about that and you're continuing to send me bacon jokes
Right.
and videos of people eating meat and all of this other stuff, and we've had that conversation, that's when the boundary is going to come into play.
Right.
But I won't go into it without having a conversation first anymore. But I watched this happen
Wow.
because la 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 la, we don't want
Yeah.
to talk about it. We don't want to talk about it. Kelly's still here. So shout out to Kelly. Miss Brittany's still here. Raise
What
me
up, Brittany?
I love it. I love it. I like how you're the plant-based explorer. You make vegan look so much fun and filled with because it is. It's really not hard. People are so funny when they say to me, I could never eat vegan. I'm like, you've never eaten an apple?
Right.
What?
The whole
What?
label.
I mean, it's the label. It's going back to what we've talked about so often with language. And that's why a lot of these big companies, Hellman's is a big example of this. Hellman's had come out with a vegan mayonnaise, so good. Tastes just like the original Hellman's mayonnaise, okay? And they just removed vegan from their label and changed it to plant-based because people feel some kind of way.
The label vegan.
It's it. And it's tough. It's tough with that. Kelly's like her recipes are I know. Listen, it's so we had a whole smorgasbord for Phil's birthday last night, y'all. We ate good last night. Some cheesecake and everything. Okay. We ate good last night. And can we stop labeling opinions as my personal truth? How the hell the truth can't be shared?
Exactly. Because we take what we believe and we try to force it on another person as the truth, and it's not. It is not.
Right.
It's your belief. If that's what you believe, that's fine. But you can't say that it's across the board. You can't generalize human being experiences. And that's a lot of times our conversations want to generalize the experience of all human beings. Well, guess what? That's not. You can't say that.
The realization that I've come to for me when it comes to being vegan and compassion and how that all ties in my life is doing exactly what Jamad said. I live my life the way that I live it. I make my food look damn good and it tastes good too. And now I have my boundaries for my home. I don't allow animal products or byproducts in my home at all. I don't. If you want to have it in your coffee, please drink it before you come in. You do your own thing, but it's not allowed in my home. So I have my boundary with that. But I'm also like understanding that before we became vegan, I was in the same position as y'all.
Mm-hmm.
In the same position as you guys. Brittany said, I've arrived at a place of showing compassion to Mother Earth and animals and all living things. I wasn't aware of a lot of things, and taking the time to really learn has changed my life. And in return, I have received more compassionate people in my life. And I love how that's happened for us as well. I agree. I think, I'm not necessarily a believer in karma. I know you have your feelings about that as well. But I do feel very strongly that we've talked about this before, that everything and everyone has an energy. And if you're putting that energy of compassion out, then it becomes more available, or at least more recognizable in our own lives as we're practicing that as well. But I want to save my my piece here from this book for the very end. Do you have any final thoughts about how are you committing to living more compassion in your life?
Like I said, for me, because I've done so much self-development, self-healing, and being back in church now and being the fruit of the spirit, like I've learned that, again, there are ways that we be, and there are things that we have to do. And one of the biblical principles, the kingdom principles, is you have to be those principles. You have to be love, be compassion, be kindness, be joy. You have to be those. but I have to be those for myself first. And so in the spaces that I'm not, because I'm not compassionate to myself all the time either. Because there are some things I don't like about myself. There's some things that I'm still dealing with that I haven't complete. I'm not 100% perfect. So when those things show up in myself that I don't like about myself, what am I going to gaze that thought about myself up against? What the world has to say about me, or what God has to say about me, or what I have to say about myself? And so I've given my principles up to what God has to say. And I've gained more compassion for myself, which allows me to be that fruit that when people come in communication with me, who I get to be for those people that I come in contact is important. And I could be upset and frustrated and mad and angry and embarrassed, or I could be calm, patient, joy, peace, compassion, empathy, because I know what that feels like for me when I wasn't that for myself. And so I'm always, not always, but I practice a lot of that to myself so that I can be at peace with myself. I don't want to be mad at myself because I feel like this or look like this. So you have to give that self compassion to yourself first. And a lot of times when people say I want compassion is because they're not getting it for themselves.
100%.
So a lot of times we say what we are dealing with out of our mouth. And if somebody's screaming about compassion, that they need that from you, it's probably because they don't even know how to give that back to themselves. So they need you to give it to them or show them how to give that compassion so that they can give it. And so self-compassion first. Before you give it away, you got to have it for yourself and tell the truth about how much you have for yourself. Percentage-wise, I got about 90% of compassion for myself now. But that was over 14 years of work to get to that place today.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's compassion for ourselves, I think is really important. And one of my chapters in Radical Self-Love that I mentioned, I have 2 chapters in here. One is about authenticity and being yourself and what that looks like. And the other thing other one is a chapter called Rewriting the Definition of Self-Compassion. And so when I talked about in the beginning how I did not like the definition of compassion, this is now going to explain to you why.
Okay,
And I also put the link down in the comments for y'all to get this book. This is a wonderful book that was compiled by Lori Ann Davis that has been on Beyond 2D as well as every other show we have here on the Breakthrough Show Network. But it's a wonderful book. As I'm going to bring up that definition as I'm reading this so you have it front of mind. So I actually start the chapter with dictionary.com says that compassion is the following, and it that's how I started the chapter. And I loved also I want to shout out really quickly. There's a quote in the beginning of this from Dalai Lama that says, "If you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion." So loved that quote starting out. But in the end of this chapter, I want to read this part because I talk about some of the different things with compassion. And then I say, now let's rewrite the definition of compassion. So going back to the definition for compassion, noun, a feeling of deep sympathy and sorrow for another who is stricken by misfortune, accompanied by a strong desire to alleviate the suffering. As I said in the beginning, this definition is part of the reason we have a lack of compassion for ourselves and others. Now that I've shared about the importance of compassion and how easy it can be to choose compassion, I'll explain. First, compassion is more than just sympathy and sorrow. It's love. It's peace. It's joy. It's frustration. It's so many emotions. What emotions have you experienced when it comes to compassion? Next, the definition says, stricken by misfortune. I have a question for you. Why are we waiting until we experience misfortune to be compassionate? Have you ever thought about that before? Honestly, until I sat down to write this chapter, I hadn't given it much thought. However, throughout the writing process, it's a question that has come up for me time and time again. For me, there is no question that we should show compassion to others all the time. But what if we choose to live self compassion every moment of every day, in moments of misfortune and in moments of thriving? The next question is, what if we acted on that strong desire instead of just having it? What if we put action behind our compassion, especially when it comes to ourselves? Wouldn't compassion be an amazing verb too and not just a noun? I encourage you to think about these things, and I invite you to rewrite the definition of self compassion with me so that we can thrive in this life and, by extension, change the world. Self compassion, noun, the life giving feelings you have for yourself every moment of every day, allowing yourself to fully love yourself, forgive yourself, and own your worth, accompanied by a strong desire and actions to change anything that stands in the way of that. How will you choose to show yourself compassion today and every day? And that's how I ended the chapter. Rewriting it, making it jessicasdictionary.com.
No, and you know what? I believe that's at some point from our childhood to you become this adult person. I had to go back and challenge the first 40 years of my life. And a lot of stuff that my parents taught, that my environment taught me, was just, it was to survive those moments in time, but it was not who I was at 40. And I didn't want to be those ways anymore. So I had to figure out new ways to be. And I had to expand my perception of myself. I had to go and look at what did compassion mean to me in the survival state of mind. But now I want to live life. So yeah, you have to rewrite. You have to rewrite your experiences of yourself, because if you keep carrying those past experiences, then you're gonna still be producing that, those emotions, and those emotions don't work for me anymore. Yeah. They're still there. I can definitely be a jerk and an a-hole in a hot second, and I can be right in a hot second. But is that who I say I am today?
Right.
I'm not that. I'm not. I don't want to be right anymore, because I understand that being right in some conversations, there's no love present if I'm right. You're invalidating that person's experience.
Right.
And I can see the impact of when my feelings were being invalidated and how I felt, and then how I've made people feel by invalidating their experience. So yeah, you got to be willing to do that work. And a lot of people aren't willing because we want to be right. My opinion is my opinion, and you can't tell me, even though I know it's wrong or corrupted, it's still mine, and you can't tell me. And so we want to be right.
So are you willing to give up? That's our question for everybody. Are you willing to give up the need to be right? Mm-hmm. And why? My additional question is what I presented in that chapter, which is, why are we waiting for misfortune in order to be compassionate?
Exactly. That's that survival state of mind.
It's just being, just be.
Just be it.
Fire. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Woo woo, Lori. Yes, we love some Lori and Davis. And listen, it's already in the book. It's already behind the scenes. Okay. It's already in the we've had over 250 people on the Breakthrough Show Network in the last several years, and with it just amazing breakthrough conversations. And so it's on the list. It's on the list. I'll say that. It's being put together. So I'm excited. I think this was a great conversation today. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and also being a part of the conversation. You know that this show really is not just about the 2Ds. It's about beyond 2D, which means we need you to be a part of it in the comments, because like we talked about, everybody has a different opinion, everybody has a different experience, and I really want this to be a space of us not just talking but listening and being ears of compassion, people of compassion here on the show. As I mentioned, next week on the show, we are going to be talking about. Dun, dun, dun. Go ahead.
Yes, that child to parent relationship is so important. So important. If you just look in the world today, you can see it, you can hear a lot of people talk about how they feel and think about their parents. And a lot of it is it's mixed emotions, mixed feelings. So how can we get to that place of forgiveness of our parents, forgiveness of ourselves, so that we can restore these relationships? We can reconcile those relationships. So we're going to talk about that next week. I'm going to share my journey in that as a 40-year-old man going back in time and reconciling my relationship with my parents of how I thought they were, which was totally the mindset of a child and a perspective and a perception of a child. So I was willing to give my old views up about my parents.
So Tuesday, May 14th, 2024, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time. Bridges of Healing, Navigating Forgiveness Between Generations. Navigating forgiveness between generations. I really feel like there's going to be some massive generational healing that is going to happen on that episode. I'm believing for, if you are simply here to take it in, that there's going to be a healing that happens within you. That's what I'm here for. Brittany's like,
no, hey, Brittany, no, you don't. No, you don't.
I feel a little something. Feel a little something coming on. I love this really quick. I'm always willing for the spirit to prove me wrong. I'm very open to my intuition to tell me when I'm off, and I think that that's a beautiful way to be willing to be wrong. Be willing to be wrong. Be willing to hear a new perspective. And not even necessarily be wrong, but be willing to process something that's outside of your realm of thinking.
Exactly.
Be willing to throw out some of these definitions that
For
and
real.
rewrite them because it's hard. Like we're both, and that's part of, me and Farron are both working on that for ourselves, like these words that have a hold on us. And we've had our own, both of us have had our own holy crap moments on this show.
Go look at the other episodes. You'll see it.
Yes. I'm so glad you're here, Farron.
Hey,
Cannot wait. I've been on this healing path. I, on a personal note, the timing of next episode. That's all. I don't even have to say anything. I don't even. That's it. That's it. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be wonderful. I love you all so much. Thank you all for being here tonight. And we will see you in a couple weeks for part 3 of our series on forgiveness and compassion. And thank you all for being here. We appreciate you. We will see you next time. Bye.